Picture this. You're in the zone. You've trudged through an entire game, and at last, you've reached the end boss. You're expecting an epic, climactic duel to the death, showcasing everything you've learned through your experience. But instead,
attack, Banisher! Metabee wins!
a disappointing final boss fight can really dampen a game's ending experience for everyone, even if the game itself is amazing. For the record, we're not solely focusing on the bad bosses. Some of these can actually be pretty good under different circumstances. However, we will be looking over the bosses that had so much hype building up, only to end in a complete letdown for the story or the gameplay. Usually because of a last-minute attempt to subvert expectations. Hopefully this will teach us about keeping your expectations low to avoid feeling cheated by these anticlimactic finales. Borderlands is a fun, campy series about a group of vault hunters and other misfits trying to survive the dangers of Pandora. While its humor is definitely all over the place, it is definitely fun to play. The first game of the series kind of gets overlooked a bit considering the popularity of the sequel, but it's still an okay game in its own right. You play as one of a group of 4 vault hunters as you are led by a mysterious voice to find said vault and open it with the lure of treasure in the back of your mind. After killing hordes of outlaws, monsters, and professional soldiers and being betrayed a few times, you finally get to the vault and see the treasure. A sealed away eldritch abomination. Yeah, that's a thing. The destroyer comes out with no buildup, other than you hearing there was some sort of danger when opening the vault. Of course, most people were surprised to find themselves stuck fighting it, and it's honestly a very uninteresting fight. For most players, it's either a giant damage sponge that will have you shooting at its weak spots over and over until you kill it / run out of ammo, or a quick and easy battle where you can kill it quickly due to having overpowered legendary weapons and abilities. Plus, even as far as monsters go, it's kinda ugly. I get the reason why they didn't mention anything about the boss was because of keeping the idea of treasure in the Vault Hunter's mind to keep them going. And to be fair, this game didn't exactly have the greatest story or bosses, but I feel like something else could have been done. This boss has changed in the new remaster that came out last year, but besides changing some attack patterns and adding more enemies, it didn't do much except make it a bit easier. Overall, kind of a letdown.
Maybe the real treasure was the friends we made along the way. Now!
Necromorphs, the undead baddies of Dead Space, and the stuff that nightmares are made of. Throughout the game, there's a lot of build-up for these beauties, from small bits of lore regarding the Church of Unitology, to snippets of how they actually function, including a rather grim suggestion that something way more sinister is controlling them. So what exactly is controlling them?
I wonder if Arkham will mind if I start sleeping with a gun.
This is the Hive Mind, a tentacle-savvy leviathan serving as the puppet master of the Necromorphs, and the endgame boss of Dead Space. Gotta say, the build-up for this beast was phenomenal. All the mutants and lore that was spawned from it, the cinematography, and finally the big reveal. All of it excellently on point. Then you finally come face to face with the monster, mining tools cocked, thinking it's gonna be an epic hello beastie moment, and...
That was easy.
There's literally nothing to it. Just destroy all the exploding sacks around it and boom, it's dead. If you're looking for a challenge, you're gonna have to keep looking because every attack it throws at you is really easy to dodge. And even if it manages to grab a hold of you, you can escape just like that. I feel just as cheated as you do. What really makes this one so disappointing is how inconsistent it feels compared to everything else we're shown about the Hive Mind. The narrative hyped the heck out of this monster. We even got to see how much of a threat it was. And yet, all that legit bravado is tossed out the window with how impossible to lose the fight is. I actually wish it were harder.
Seriously, what's a guy gotta do to get whipped by some tentacle monstrosity? Context, honey.
For almost as long as video games have been a thing, there have been final bosses. Few game franchises can claim the longevity of the Mario franchise, and Bowser is usually the go-to boss for any occasion. Sometimes he's the big bad, sometimes he's not, but he's almost always someone who gets in the way of saving the princess. When she's not in another castle, that is. With such a long career under his belt, you'd expect there to be a few high and lows. Given the nature of this list, we're going to be talking about one of the lows. Yeah, Bowser from Sunshine is pretty bad, but to be honest, you were a little limited in the creativity you could put into the scene and mechanics, so I'm not too angry. The final boss fight of Super Mario Galaxy 2, on the other hand, had every opportunity to blow us away and just blew it. One of the major problems I have with this boss fight is it feels like it's been done before. People have joked that Galaxy 2 should have been a DLC pack, but nowhere does it feel more apparent than in this boss fight. Bowser wants to build a galactic empire with Peach as his empress. Same goal as Galaxy 1. Bowser draws Mario to an isolated planetoid and attacks by punching it to send shockwaves. Did it in Galaxy 1. It feels like they just took the Galaxy 1 fight and made it a little bit bigger. Something that would be appropriate for a DLC, but not for a full-blown sequel.
Galaxy 1 did it! Galaxy 1 did it!
I mean, sure, the spectacle is great, the arena being a black hole is cool, and the music is incredible. But take 2 steps to the side and you realize it's kind of flat. Like putting a tuxedo on a nothing burger. This final boss fight, the culmination of everything you learned throughout the game, boils down to smacking rocks with your butt. You ever think maybe Mario could use some lessons from Kirby about how to properly do a final boss? Breath of the Wild is a stunning game. The soundtrack, the visuals, the new take on an old formula. It's no wonder why Breath of the Wild is a critical and casual darling. Well, unfortunately, there is one huge, glaring flaw. The final fight with Calamity Ganon. Now, don't get me wrong, most of the fight is pretty good. Going up against Calamity Ganon as a hideous spider-man hybrid, you have to manage your resources both in the food you have and your weapon durability. If the fight had just ended there, it would have been an okay boss fight. Nothing to write home about, but certainly not deserving a spot on this list. No, what actually lands it on is the final phase of the boss fight. This dumb giant pig. There are a lot of things that could have improved it, but the most notable sin is there's no urgency. Compared to the previous forms, it feels like this Ganon doesn't really register that you exist. There aren't a lot of ways that Ganon can hurt you, and the ways that he can are heavily telegraphed and easy to dodge. You can just do nothing, and nothing happens. Heck, honestly, I probably would have been okay with a time limit to add that sense of urgency. Like maybe you need to kill him before Ganon accumulates enough power and destroys the area. But that isn't the worst part of this fight, however. Nope. The worst part is you can easily glitch yourself out of the arena with Calamity Ganon and go on your merry way. The incarnation of all the evil and chaos in the game, and absolutely nothing changes when he takes the field. The sky doesn't go dark, the music is pretty lackluster, you barely even hear Calamity Ganon roar menacingly or stomp the ground to earth-shattering effect. I mean, just look at him, he's the size of a small mountain! You should feel every impact of his movement. He just stands there like an oversized lawn ornament and eats your arrows of light until he's dead. Now, I get that they were trying to do a full circle echo here, you know, having the game end in the way it was first revealed to the world. Haha, you're so clever, you get a cookie.
Yeah, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
But there are few things more disappointing in video games than a big bad who's been hyped up to high heaven and then just rolls over like a dying dog when you actually fight them.
You know, when I said that stupid pig was too hard, I didn't mean go in the opposite direction!
The world building of Gears of War 2 still amazes me to this day. The planet of Sarah torn apart by a pandemic of locusts, a civil war between said locusts and their bigger, more gruesome cousins, the Lambent, and some of the nastiest mutant monstrosities and boss fights. Of course, all these nasty beast battles culminate to the final boss, a Lambent brumack. This is gonna sound weird, but the design for this one's kinda boring, to be honest. Don't get me wrong, it's still a pretty terrifying monster and its enormous size really adds to its intimidation, but still, after facing down the hive mind from earlier, this mutated battle tank doesn't really feel that scary, especially for a final boss. Speaking of, what's the grandiose battle strategy for slaying this gigantic abomination?
President!
That's literally all there is. Aim at the beast, hold down a single button to shoot, and that's it. All that tension and world building and a towering monster boss that makes you feel like a mosquito, and it's resolved with just aiming and holding down a button? It feels like they spent more time trying to make this thing look as monstrous as possible instead of throwing together an actual boss fight. In fact, I'm not even sure it's possible to lose to this thing. I'll give the other Lambent monsters this, at least most of them can take a punch and give it right back, but the Lambent brumack is just an embarrassment to their species. And even more so since this is what they end Gears of War 2 on. At long last, Master Assassin Ezio Auditore has come to put an end to the snake that executed all his kin, Rodrigo Borgia, who somehow weaseled his way into becoming the Pope. In one corner, Ezio is armed to the teeth with years of training and an arsenal of weaponry perfect for his profession. In the other corner, Rodrigo wields the power of Eden on his side, and they're ready to snuff the other out. How do we see these embittered enemies do battle?
Come on, Queensbury rules.
A fist fight. All those years of vengeance-driven motivation, the skills of an ace killer under your belt, and you're gonna wrap this up with fisticuffs? You know, I can actually overlook this if the fight was actually exciting. Heck, Metal Gear Solid 4 capped off a decade-long storyline with two old people beating each other up, and it was amazing! But look at what we're given here. A bland arena and two combatants throwing slow, lethargic punches, no strategy to the fight whatsoever, and all the while them talking each other's ears off with half-baked philosophy despite constantly getting punched in the chest.
Seriously, how do you make beating up the Pope suck? Context, honey.
You know, just saying the word context doesn't make it better.
And to add insult to injury, Ezio doesn't even go through with killing him. I mean, I can kinda understand why they did it because Rodrigo in the game is actually modeled after the real-life Pope Alexander VI, and killing him like this would be historically inaccurate. But they addressed why that wouldn't be a problem in the first game.
Some of it seems to contradict what the Animus is showing me.
Anyone can write a book, and they can put whatever they want on its pages.
So if Disney can play loosey-goosey with history, why can't Assassin's Creed? Do you really think John Smith was that pretty? He wishes. It's really a downer because up to this point, Assassin's Creed 2 had a lot going for it, and this fight couldn't have been a more perfect setup. But when it needed its best foot forward, it took 2 steps back and tripped, leaving us with an anticlimactic slow duel of shame. Though I guess as a nice consolation, we do get to kill Rodrigo's son in Brotherhood, and that fight is a little more satisfying, but it only half fills the void left in our hearts.
This next section puts the final in final bosses. It's Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy, like most JRPGs, tend to have some sort of god or eldritch abomination as its final battle. After all, the whole level 1 save cat final level kill god meme is accurate to say the least. But of course, in a series where we make fun of characters brooding and not showing emotion, we get a few final bosses that leave very little impact. Let's start with Final Fantasy IV. Zemus is a Lunarian that spent most of the game trying to eradicate humanity by controlling the game's primary antagonist, Golbez. He's mentioned a few times in the story, but it really sucks out any personal connection when you have the puppeteer not show up until the very end. And we don't even fight him! We fight his embodiment of hatred, Zeromus, as the final boss. Classy. In a similar vein, in Final Fantasy III, we have Cloud of Darkness. To be fair, this game is one of the weakest Final Fantasies, but considering you spent most of the game going against the sorceress Xanda, I don't know, only for the real main villain to come out after Xanda's defeat is a bit of a cop-out. She doesn't even have a personality. Well, she gets one in Dissidia, but the best we get from that is Laguna's G-rated boner. Oh, okay, not disappointing enough for you? Well, how about Orphan? Final Fantasy XIII has Barthandelus hype himself up throughout the game, and he just dies to become Orphan. And it's not the first time Final Fantasy hyped up an old dude to be the final boss, then pulling back, so not even original there. And unlike the last 2 bosses where the battle was okay, but the characters were weak, Orphan has a terrible battle, with a first form that can one-shot you out of the gate unless you're running triple healer or sentinel, and a second form that has a time limit. And of course, we come to the big 2. Yevon and Necron. The first just spends his time possessing Jek's final Aeon form and repeating a cycle of creating new and new sins. Of course, when he does come out, he has no personality, autolife is always active, and he majorly casts gravity spells which never kill. Sure, you can make an argument that Jekt is the final boss, but Yevon is the final encounter, so we're going with that. And as for Necron, he comes out of nowhere. When Kuja pretty much one-shots you with Ultima, Necron shows up as the personification of death. He has no build-up, no connections, a generic personality, and overshadows Trance Kuja as the final boss. So, in the end, all we were stuck asking is,
What the hell was that?
the section's gone on long enough, so I'll finish with this. Most of the bosses in this section are here because they don't have any personality or build-up, and just exist as a god final battle. And with the exception of Orphan and Yevon, the battles themselves are okay. But considering the hoops and story you go through to fight these guys, you expect way more out of them.
Aged thousands of years since he was a pawn of Gygus, but still, he has the mentality of an immature. Yeah, it was a little cringy, but makes his whole still good times.
Back in the day, we did a countdown where we expressed our extreme frustration with the final boss of No More Heroes 2, Jasper Bat Jr. Suffice to say, our opinions really haven't changed all that much. To spare the sheer unfiltered embarrassment of 2010 me, the battle with Jasper Bat Jr. is incredibly difficult for all the wrong reasons. After a fairly easy and uneventful first phase, the second cranks up the BS to 11 as Jasper gains the ability to frickin' teleport and inflicts stupid amounts of damage. Good luck trying to dodge those. And if you happen to get hit by his wind blast when you're near a window, it's an instant death guarantee. While the final phase is a lot less brutal, it's still annoying due to the terrible camera and tiny arena, as well as the really freaking weird design. Are we seriously capping off the game on this? Now, at this point, I'm sure someone is going to bring up the argument that the battle was supposed to suck. It was supposed to be unsatisfying, and a commentary on how revenge is bad. And to that I say, why? Why should the game sacrifice a satisfying boss fight for the sake of a message? This isn't like Spec Ops: The Line where the whole point was to brutally take apart the military shooter genre. There's subverting expectations, and then there's actively screwing with the audience. The sad thing is that Jasper actually could have worked in the story if he was given more thought. What if the fight against him was fun and well made, but still really easy, so that after the fight, Travis remembers everyone he killed to get here, and how empty he feels, and realizes how pathetic and a waste of time all of this was, and decides that Jasper isn't worth killing? Or what about the players given the choice whether or not to deliver a finishing blow? Or heck, what if Travis decided not to continue the cycle of violence and refused to fight? There are plenty of ways this could have been a deep experience.
Sorry, one of my repressed countdown memories just escaped. That used to be me.
As a whole, the Arkham games make a near-perfect Batman video game series that really captures the feeling of being the Dark Knight. And of course, it boasts some tense, immersive, and downright terrifying boss fights, and some that are, at worst, slightly annoying or just ho-hum average. But two infamous bosses really stick out in the worst way. One being Deathstroke's tank brawl in Arkham Knight, the other being...
Oh. This is gonna be one of those days, isn't it?
For context, the Joker develops a super serum called Titan that turns anyone injected with it into a hulking, Bane-like monster and plans to make an army of these rampaging beasts. But in the very end, when his entire plan comes crashing down, he...
I have nothing to live for.
What?
Okay, this was an unpleasant surprise, but maybe the actual battle will hold up?
A few minutes later.
It's just a glorified version of every other Titan fight in this game. Avoid getting smacked by Joker, take out his goons, pin him down, and beat the fudge out of him. Don't get me wrong, the fight can actually work in theory, but for the final battle against the Clown Prince of Crime himself, yeah, no, that's not gonna fly here, Batsy. I'd expect at least a little more spice than that. Then there's the elephant in the room. A lot of fans complained about how this desperate boneheaded move goes completely against Joker's character, and I can really see why. Yes, Joker's unpredictable and has pulled some extreme schemes before. I mean, come on, he let this whack job pretend to be him once. But this? Joker never needed, nor really wanted muscles to overpower the Bat. So this not only feels way too overkill, but also really cheap. I mean, okay, we've seen him pull this kind of stuff before in 2004's The Batman, but that show's tone was on a tightrope, so we could probably overlook it there. But for a darker, more serious story with Joker psychologically playing with his prey, this is completely out of character. And while the transformation doesn't make Joker act like a hulking brute, I still think it made him dumber, because at one point during the fight, he turns his back to you to literally smile for the cameras and gives you a free shot to grapple him down and punch his lights out. Once, I can forgive. It happening more than once? Joker, that's stupid. You're stupid. Stop being stupid.
I'm an idiot! You're an idiot! You're an idiot!
It's really sad because Arkham Asylum is a really solid start to the series, only to be dragged down by a really dumb, disappointing finale. Okay, slight interjection to myself because I realized something literally the day of this video needing to be released, so I didn't have enough time to change it or make it flashy, so we're doing this now. Having Titan Joker could work thematically if someone else shot Joker with the Titan formula. Maybe Harley Quinn? Like, she does it because she thinks it's a funny joke and what his plan was the whole time. Then Joker gets mad at her for not getting the joke, then slaps her around like the abusive guy he is. Then he slightly loses his noggin in the transformation and goes a little power crazy and goofy, explaining away how his actions during the fight paint him as really dumb. If Harley was the one that shot the Joker, that could have led to some really interesting development for her later in the Arkham storyline. Like, it's completely her fault that her puddin' died because she didn't get the joke. It makes the idea of her trying to bring a Joker back much stronger as well, and she has a stronger presence in the story. The idea of Titan Joker isn't inherently bad. In fact, it could have been brilliant if a little more thought was put into it. But I'll at least give it credit for this. It did pave the way for one of the series' most dramatic and tragic moments in City, and one of Batman's biggest inner struggles in Night. As an arc, it's really freaking good. But when you look back, all that emotional and mental trauma could have been avoided if Joker didn't try to take Batsy to the gun show. Harihara Digital Devil Saga. Pathetically easy, but at least the music is still awesome. Roxas Recoded. This fight forgets everything that made the fight great in 2 Final Mix. Trevelyan GoldenEye 007. Unsure if this qualifies as a boss, but it still leaves you with a hollow feeling inside. Shaken, not stirred. Legate Lanius, New Vegas. Boring Damage Sponge with next to no buildup, but he's skippable, so I guess he gets a pass. The Dark Prince, Prince of Persia 2 Thrones. While a neat capstone of the Prince and Dark Prince dynamic, the platforming is impossible to lose. The Fable series, aside from being the poster child for why you shouldn't trust Peter Molyneux, is known for its comical tone as a fantasy game. This makes the main villain of Fable 2, Lucian, stand out, but in a good way. In contrast to most other characters in the game and even the franchise, Lucian is a surprisingly serious character. He's a broken man who, despite his actions, starts off with fairly sympathetic motivations, only to slowly grow into more of an extremist as the game goes on. He becomes the type of person who feels any action they take is justified because of the goal, and to make things worse, they feel compelled by their morality to do it. When you're dealing with morality, a lot of times there's no reasoning with that kind of person.
Every day, humans come one step closer to self-destruction. I'm not destroying the world, I'm saving it.
Over the course of the story, Lucian does some pretty deplorable things, both to the everyday people of the world as well as the player. This makes you really not like the guy, which should pay off when you get to kill him. But instead of a satisfying face-off against Lucian, this happens.
That's it? That's what the story was building up to? How do you kill a climax this badly? Too easy.
Again, I see what they were trying to do.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
But again, it's an utter anticlimax with no catharsis, especially if this punk killed your family alongside your dog. Now, to be fair, you could make the argument that this technically isn't a boss fight, more of just a glorified cutscene. But 1, you still have to press buttons to defeat an enemy. And 2, that doesn't change the fact that this game actively denies the catharsis you would have gotten from a proper boss fight against Lucian. At this point, you may be wondering what happens if you don't kill him. Well, this happens.
Oh, I thought he'd never shut up. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to kill him?
I'm the fiery Joker, and I better get something pretty freaking funny to offset this rage that I'm about to...
God!
Hey everyone, this is Josh. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the video around. Please check out my other social media like my Twitter, Twitch, and Tumblr. Consider checking below the video and donating to my Patreon, Streamlabs for my merchandise, or becoming a YouTube member, and you'll get rewards like this. Our name shoutouts come from Rainbow Hooves Productions, Ryan Anderson, Sonic Cody, and Misty Phantom. Our messages are as follows. Rainbow Hooves Productions says, remember to stay safe and subscribe to Rainbow Hooves Productions. Ryan Anderson says, remember to try and stay safe, happy, and healthy, folks. Thanks for watching.